No one inside the MotoGP paddock expected anything extraordinary that morning in Sepang. No grandstands, no cameras, no headlines waiting to be written. And yet by the end of the day, everything felt different. Behind closed garage doors, Yamaha rolled out a machine that wasn't meant to make noise just yet. A bike stripped of sponsors. A project whispered about for years but never truly seen. And on top of it sat a rider whose name alone already carried controversy. Toprak Razgatlıoğlu. What followed was not just a test. It was a warning. Because within a few laps, the paddock realized this wasn't about lap times anymore. It was about direction, identity, and a future Yamaha had been desperately chasing. And once the numbers appeared on the screens, there was no going back. From the outside, the Sepang International Circuit looked unusually calm. Yamaha's private test was scheduled quietly, far from the attention that usually follows factory teams. Official statements were minimal. Expectations were deliberately lowered. But inside the Yamaha garage, tension was thick. Senior engineers moved quickly, speaking in short sentences. The bike itself, Yamaha's long-rumored V4, sat partially hidden, still missing the visual confidence of a finished MotoGP weapon. This wasn't just another prototype. This was Yamaha admitting the old way no longer worked. For years, Yamaha defended the inline-4 philosophy. Smoothness, precision, corner speed, it was the core of their identity, but modern MotoGP had moved on. Ducati, KTM, Aprilia all had embraced raw power, aggressive acceleration, and aero-driven performance. Yamaha resisted, until results forced their hand. And now, with the V4 finally breathing on track, the question wasn't whether it worked. It was whether it worked fast enough. Then Toprak exited pit lane. Toprak Razgatlıoğlu has never been a safe choice. His riding style is violent by MotoGP standards, late braking that borders on reckless, rear-wheel instability he seems to welcome, corner entries that look almost uncontrolled until they are. In World Superbike, that style made him a champion. In Yamaha's MotoGP project, it made him a risk. For years, many believed Toprak would never fit Yamaha's MotoGP bike. The inline-4 punished aggression. It demanded finesse. Riders had to adapt, not dominate. But the V4 changed the equation. Yamaha didn't bring Toprak to smooth the bike. They brought him to break it. If the V4 could survive his inputs, the extreme braking forces, the abrupt throttle application, then it wasn't just competitive. It was ready. And from the very first laps, something unexpected happened. Toprak didn't look like a rider adapting. He looked like a rider arriving home. Within only a handful of laps, engineers began quietly exchanging glances. No celebration, no reaction, just recalculation. Because the times coming in didn't match the plan. Toprak's pace in Sector 1 and Sector 3, traditionally Yamaha's weakest areas, was suddenly sharp. Under hard braking, the bike remained planted. On corner exit, it didn't hesitate. Telemetry showed improved rear traction, reduced wheel spin, more stability when the load shifted forward. These weren't marginal gains. They were structural changes. Even more concerning for rivals was how quickly it happened. This wasn't a perfect setup. This wasn't a polished race-spec engine. This was still a bike learning how to exist. And yet, Toprak's laps were already brushing against factory racebike benchmarks. The Yamaha V4 wasn't just fast. It was forgiving. And that made it dangerous. Fabio Quartararo wasn't scheduled to make headlines that day. But inside the Yamaha garage, his reaction said everything. When the comparative times appeared, reports suggested Fabio simply shook his head, not in disbelief, in recognition. For years, he had carried Yamaha on his shoulders, extracting results from a bike that couldn't fight on acceleration, couldn't protect tires, and couldn't attack aggressively. Now he was watching another rider unlock something he had been asking for. According to paddock whispers, Fabio spent a long time with engineers after the session. No anger, no frustration. Just questions. Because the V4 represented hope, but also competition. If Yamaha had finally built a bike that rewarded aggression, then the hierarchy inside the garage was no longer guaranteed. And that realization changed the mood entirely. One fast lap can be ignored. Consistency cannot. During short, long-run simulations, Toprak's rhythm barely dropped. Tire degradation remained manageable. The rear didn't collapse under repeated hard exits, a problem that had haunted Yamaha for seasons. Some mechanics quietly mentioned something felt different watching the data unfold. The bike wasn't fighting back. Toprak wasn't wrestling it. They were cooperating. His feedback was minimal, calm, precise, no drama. He pointed at breaking points, not complaints. And that worried engineers more than excitement ever could. Because it suggested this wasn't an outlier performance. It was repeatable. Jack Miller didn't hide his reaction. Internally, he reportedly expressed surprise at how natural Toprak looked on the V4. Not just the speed, the confidence, the absence of hesitation. Miller understood development bikes. He knew how rough early prototypes usually felt. This one didn't. Word began spreading quietly, not through lap charts but through tone, engineers talking faster, managers watching exits more closely, rival teams taking mental notes. The Yamaha garage, long defined by defensive posture, suddenly felt alert. Alive. And that was when Yamaha management faced an uncomfortable truth. This test wasn't just gathering data anymore. It was making statements. Officially, Yamaha played everything down. It's still early. Development phase only. Not comparable to race conditions. But body language tells its own story. Faint smiles, long debriefs, executives staying longer than planned. According to insiders, Toprak's input was immediately flagged as critical for finalizing the V4's character. His writing exposed weaknesses faster than simulations ever could. And suddenly, timelines shifted. Conversations that were planned for next year happened now. Because if this bike continued improving at this rate, Yamaha wouldn't just return to competitiveness. They would return with an edge. Ducati dominance thrives on predictability. Known strengths, known rivals, known threats. Toprak on a Yamaha V4 breaks all three. His style doesn't follow trends. His braking rewrites reference points. His willingness to push unstable bikes beyond comfort zones makes modeling difficult. And Yamaha, for the first time in years, appeared ready to embrace chaos rather than avoid it. This wasn't about copying Ducati anymore. It was about confronting them. Aftermath, a future no one can ignore. When the test ended, Toprak said very little. He didn't celebrate. He didn't tease. He simply walked away. And that silence echoed louder than any quote. Because now the Yamaha V4 is no longer a rumor. Toprak Razgatlıoğlu is no longer a theoretical MotoGP threat. And the 2025 season is no longer predictable. The paddock felt it that day. A shift. A disturbance. A message delivered without words. MotoGP didn't witness a race in Sepang. It witnessed a beginning.